Hey friends. Let's see if you can see. So I'm gonna hang out for a second, and you can look at him. He's cuter. I'm gonna hang out for a second and see if I can tag some folks into this video. Hello. And then in a minute or two, I'm just going to chat about some dog things that we've learned. Usually I would go live to talk about business, but, I keep having this dog conversation a lot. So whenever that happens in my business, I make some content so I can just point to that and say, here you go. So that's what I'm doing here. Let's see if my live is coming up. I can't find my own live. All right, I'll have to tag people afterwards probably. It's very, very weird. All right. Oh, look at you. Look at you. Just being so good. You can be a good role model. All righty. Ooh, I got 3 people already. Cool. Let's talk about dog stuff. I know I'm being loud. So for those of you, I have a lot of people who follow me for business, but most of you know that we have a dog and we're obsessed with him, and it's our first dog. He's 2.5. His name's Obi. He's a Vizsla, which means he's a high drive, very intelligent hunting breed. And it was our first dog. We kind of went 0 to 60. And so the reason that I'm making this video is because, even though we were obsessed and we did like everything we could to prepare, we still made a ton of mistakes and we still really suffered through the teen phase. And it took us a long time to figure out like what works. And I know everybody's getting their pandemic puppies. And people are just in general, tend to struggle with dog behavior. So I wanted to come on and talk about it. So a couple of things. I'm not a dog trainer. I'm not a professional dog trainer. I'm just a person who has a dog and had a lot of challenges and wanted to share how we've overcome some of those challenges and how we continue to move in the right direction. In my other life, in my business life, I'm a content marketer and a web developer, and I have a podcast called Begin As You Mean to Go On. And I share that because that's kind of my philosophy around a lot of things. So if you're someone who has a dog and you think, oh, I'm just going to put a shock collar on my puppy because I don't want them to dig in the yard, this is either not going to help you or it's going to help you move on from that strategy, right? This is not for the people who just want the quick and easy, because that's not how I really roll in most areas of my life. So I think you'll find this particularly helpful if you have a high drive, high energy dog. If you're first time dog owners, this is the video I would have wanted to see like 2.5 years ago. And, if you're just someone who wants to have a better relationship with your dog. And almost everything that I'm going to tell you right now comes from some trainers in a company that we follow called Absolute Dogs. So in the description, you'll find tons of links to their stuff and to other trainers that we follow. We're people who watch dog training videos in our downtime and we listen to dog training podcasts. We're those people. But you don't have to be that person to have things be better with your dog. Okay, so the thing that I don't see really talked about, at least in the depth and the scope and the clarity that the Absolute Dogs folks talk about, is this thing about concept training. And concept training means we're not focused on just oh, I'm going to teach my dog to sit, I'm going to teach my dog to come. We're focused on how do we shape a dog's brain so that they naturally want to do the things that we want them to do. And almost every struggle you could talk about with your dog comes back to some foundational concept. And I super, super relate to this as a business owner and a marketer, because this is the kind of stuff that I teach my clients all the time. And I'm constantly making dog training analogies actually in my work. So some examples are socialization, right? When we got our dog, we kind of took on this traditional idea of socialization that like your dog needs to meet 100 people and, you know, you have to have people over to your house, which we can't even do right now anyway, right? Like I literally went up to like strange men wearing hats in front of the grocery store to be like, can you give my dog a treat? Right? That's not what socialization, at least as I've come to understand it, like that's not what matters, right? What matters is that you grow a dog who is calm and who is confident and who is optimistic, right? Those are concepts, right? Imagine if your dog is calm and optimistic and confident, when they see novel things in the world, then they're going to be like, oh, that's a thing, right? It's another novel thing. I don't need to worry about it because I've been taught that like crazy shit happens. And for the most part, I don't need to worry about it unless I'm told it's my business, right? And we did the opposite of that. And as a result, you know, of all that sort of overstimulation and overexposure to things, plus being a breed who's, you know, bred to hunt and notice things, right? He's supposed to point birds. Like we just ended up with a mess, right? And so then we had to figure out like, oh, that's actually not the goal, right? And we had to walk it all the way back, and we still are continually training things like calmness, and we use games to do that. So that's the other thing about Absolute Dogs is they're not the only trainers that you can find who use games, but I think the way that they use games to reshape your dog's brain is something that I hadn't really seen talked about in this way elsewhere. So before I talk about more about concepts, I want to talk about two things. Your turn, Malcolm. Thank you. I want to talk about the bucket, and I want to talk about rehearsal. So the concept of the bucket is something that I learned from Tom. So the folks who run Absolute Dogs, Lauren is a professional trainer, and she's a top agility competitor, and Tom is a vet behaviorist. And so they're always talking about the bucket. What is the bucket? You actually know what the bucket is. The bucket is if you have so much stress, you can't perform, right? If you are, you know, in pain and you're stressed out and you haven't slept, and then you have to go take a test, you're not going to perform as well on that test. And the same is true with your dog. Your dog has a bucket, and we're filling it up. The life is filling up your dog's bucket all the time with, you know, the mail carrier coming and packages and visitors and other dogs on the street and squirrels running by and like all of these things. And if they're in pain, which for us, it took us a long time to figure out what food to feed him so that his tummy was not upset. So that was a thing that was like filling up his bucket. And we would look at these YouTube videos of people like training all these tricks to their puppy. And we'd be like, why can't we have that? Well, he felt like crap a lot of the time. So it didn't work. I know. You'll get a treat. So the bucket is a really, really important concept to understand, because if your dog's bucket is constantly getting full because you think having a dog means that you have to take them on a walk, and walks are super stressful for many, many dogs, then you're going to be hard pressed to actually make progress in the things. And so one of the things that Tom and Lauren are always talking about is ditching the walk, which just sounds blasphemous to so many people. But in actuality, and this is the next thing I want to talk about, is dogs will always do what they've always done. So if your dog spends 90% of their day being stressed out and hyper, guess what they're going to do more of? So this is what he's doing now. And this is what he does like a lot of the time at home, is chill out. We do a lot of putting value into boundaries and into just hanging out. And me talking on camera like this, he's like, what's going on? Which is why, yeah, he's like, this is weird. That's why I'm paying him. So dogs will always do what they've always done. And so when Obi was little, we did all these traditional things. We did puppy classes. We went to dog parks. Now you're just being demanding. Chill out. And so what did he learn? He learned that all of his exercise and fun time was running around with other dogs or running around, in parks, like away from us. So if you're in the Portland area, you probably know 1,000 Acres, which is just what it sounds like. It's a giant natural area. And I remember taking him there and, letting him off leash because that's what people do. Hey, nope. And he immediately was like, bye. Hey. I can focus on that. He took off. He was like, I'm going to go see this family over here, like a football field away. Right. And that's because that's what he'd always done. He runs off. Like he didn't have value for being close to us. And just the other day, do you want to go Betty bye? If you want to stay here, you got to be a good boy. You got to be a good boy. Yeah. Mama's talking about you. Just the other day, one of my friends, my Facebook friends, why don't you go Betty bye? There you go. Was talking about a story where her dog got escaped basically at doggy daycare and ran off. And she had to stop what she was doing for work and go find the dog. And if that dog had value for being close to their owner, then they won't run off, right? So if you have a puppy and you're spending all of your puppy's exercise time in going to the dog park, playing with other dogs, like just know whatever your puppy is doing now, that's what they're going to keep doing. So whatever you dream of for your adult dog, like if you dream of having like amazing recall and going off leash walks and having them stay close to you, if they're not practicing that as a puppy, they're not going to practice it as an adult. And it seems so obvious when you say it, but it's just something that, we didn't, as first-time puppy owners, we had all these overwhelming things to learn and we just didn't internalize it. So that's something to think about. I lost my notes. There we go. All right. So I want to talk about these concepts. And while I do that, I'm just going to show you some different things of us playing games. And you can check that out in the background. All right, so let's talk about struggles and concepts. Common struggles are things like dogs pulling on lead, not being able to recall, in general, like taking off when you let them off leash. That's all related to proximity, right? If a dog has value for being close to you, then they wouldn't do those things, right? So there's all these games that you can play that create value for proximity. Another thing is if your dog is reactive and they're barking and lunging on lead, or they're generally like just have like no dimmer switch, right? They've got 0, they're sleeping, or they're just like high as a kite and they're running around and they're zooming, right? So that's about calmness. So if you grow calmness in your dog, then you're not going to have as many of those behaviors. And Tom talks about, these emotion boxes, right? You have the frustration box, you have the calmness box. If you take behaviors out of the calmness box, they're going to be things like chewing a bone or hanging out on a boundary or just generally like chilling out. So calmness is huge. And that's one thing like we've worked really, really hard to grow. Everybody. Thank you. Good boy. And boundary games are awesome for that. And boundary games are just growing value for your dog hanging out in a spot on a bed. And you can see we have a ton of beds here. So there's always some place for him to hang out. Because here's what your dog is not doing if they are on a boundary. Let's see, where did I put that? If your dog's on a boundary, they're not chasing your cats. They're not counter surfing. They're not jumping on your guests. Like if they're just hanging out on a boundary, there's not a lot of trouble they can get into. Although this particular bed, sometimes he likes to eat the fuzzy part, so that's no good. But by and large, if they're on a boundary, they're gonna stay out of trouble. And so if you're thinking, oh, this takes too much time, or I have kids, I can't do this, like next time, well, we're not really having guests, but next time you get a package, say, or something, like assign your kid to go and drip feed the dog on the boundary, and then they both have a job and they're out of trouble. Like, I don't have kids, but that just seems to me like a really good idea. Let's see. I see I have a few live viewers. So if y'all have comments or questions about like what this has done for us, that's why I'm putting these videos in, just to show. Okay, the other big one, and the other one we work really, really hard on, is disengagement. So you can maybe hear, I don't know if he's kind of been whining because I started feeding him and then I stop, and then he's like, hey lady, keep that kibble fest coming. Disengagement is a really, really big struggle for a lot of dogs. And if you think about what is recall, right? Your dog's out and they're doing something, they're sniffing pee, or they're peeing on something, or they're chasing a squirrel or whatever, and you call them, they need to be able to disengage from whatever it is they're doing and turn back to you. And a dog who struggles with that is not going to recall. And so disengagement is something we work on almost every night. We'll spend like 3 to 5 minutes just playing some kind of disengagement game. And it can be as simple as we throw a low value treat towards something that he would normally want to investigate. And if he turns away from it, then he gets a higher value treat, cheese or whatever have you. And all of these games, you can go to the Absolute Dogs YouTube channel. You can go check out the Sexier Than a Squirrel Challenge, which is their 25-day challenge where they'll give you a series of games to help transform whatever struggle you're having with your dog, especially like pulling on lead. And I remember the day that we went out, we were going for our walk. We got to the end of the driveway and a squirrel literally ran almost under him, like no more than 2 or 3 feet away, and he did not hit the end of the lead. And it was only a 6-foot lead, and I was like, wow, I really am sexier than a squirrel. So it totally works. Let's see, let me show you some more videos. There we go. So here is, I think this is from this morning's hike. So from getting let off lead and just immediately hightailing it like a football field away to being able to, go hiking on a trail and, do his thing, but also be much, much better about checking in and much, much better about coming back. By no means are we like where we want to be yet on this, but it's so much better than it was. And so that's about disengagement and being able to disengage from the environment. And the other thing that gets you is loose leash walking. So being able to have, a leash that doesn't have a whole bunch of tension in it when you're walking in a novel environment or when you're walking in nature or whatever it is your dog finds exciting. So I don't know. I think a few people are watching live. If y'all have questions, you can go ahead. I think I can see the comments if you put them in. But this has just been super, super huge for us. And it's not something I see folks talking about. The other concepts that they talk about a lot are things like confidence. When Obi was young, we thought because he was pretty game for anything and would kind of run over to investigate things really easily, we thought that was confidence. Actually, that was like worry and anxiousness. He's actually quite worried about a lot of things. And if you think about people who are confident, they're like, oh, that doesn't concern me, right? If you think about dogs that are super cool and confident, they're the dogs that are like, I'm just doing my thing and I don't need to worry about what else is going on. And they don't need to run up and investigate every single thing, right? So that's one that we work on. That plus optimism. Optimism is huge. And optimism is really, if you focus your socialization on growing and protecting your dog's optimism, so that when like new things happen, they're like, oh, okay, that's a new thing, whatever, right? Wouldn't that be a great sort of non-reaction for your dog to have? One of the games that we play for that is called the Crazy Lady game, and it literally just involves a lot of like talking to ourselves. And so when I was coming down off the trail the other day, I started just saying things like, hello, and then I would just feed him. Or I would say, let me leash my dog, and then I would feed him. And it was so funny because there was nobody around, but he was like, what's happening? Is there someone here? Where? And he was looking for people like the whole rest of the way down. But if you keep doing this, what they learn is like, oh, sometimes, you know, things happen. Sometimes we talk to no one. Sometimes we talk to actual people, and none of it is a big deal. So that's one that we play a lot. Another big concept is tolerance of frustration. The other day we had a really lovely training session at the park. Now when we go to the dog park, it's to hang out outside the dog park and train, basically, and train around distractions in a controlled environment where he can behave around other dogs without being able to get to other dogs. Someday we might be able to go back to the dog park and just have play dates, but this is usually what we do now. When we hear there's a meetup, we're like, great, we'll go use them as a distraction. And so tolerance of frustration is really huge. Like, can you have some grit? Can you keep going with something? Can you deal with not being able to have the thing that you want, right? Think about some of the struggles that maybe you have with your dog that are really just, they're frustrated, they don't have the ability to disengage, and they don't have the ability to handle not getting what they want. And of course, there's games for that. And then focus. Let's see if I have any other cool videos to show you all. You know, focus for you as the owner, focus for whatever job they're supposed to be doing. Focus is a huge thing, and it's a thing that you can grow. So there's one. So that's really what I wanted to say about that. This has been huge for us, and you know, we're still definitely working on things, especially out in different like challenging environments. But this is a dog who used to spend the evenings just kind of as a whirling dervish, just like walking around, chasing the cats, not being able to settle. And now this is the majority of how he spends his day. And, you know, though he gets 1 or 2 big hikes a week, a lot of times in the morning, what he gets is a nice little sniffy walk and some games and maybe some fitness. And he does really, really well. Oh, Edna, hey. Edna says, how might you use this when it comes to stealing food? I heard that Dalmatians are just like that, but I hope not. So boundary games, because he cannot steal food while he's on this boundary. So, you know, I can link you to a specific video about that, but basically it's just building value for the boundary by feeding them while they're on the boundary. And when they get to the point where they have a lot of value, they're like, oh, the other thing you have to do is you have to stop them from stealing the food, right? So don't leave food on the counters, right? Keep them out of the kitchen. He gets to go in the kitchen, but he loves butter. That's his kryptonite. So if there's butter, he's like at the counter, sort of licking the air, trying to get it. And so he has an exit command where we'll just say, okay, leave the kitchen. You can't be in the kitchen. But more often than not, we'll just put the boundary like at the edge of the kitchen, and he'll hang out there, because when he hangs out there, he gets paid. He can't get to the butter or whatever it is on the counter. But if he hangs out here, then he gets paid. So it's just a better deal. And any dog, given the opportunity, when you show them what the better deal is eventually going to take it. So the answer to almost all, yep, yeah, it's just like, and it's so hard for us as humans to think about in terms of like, what do we want the dog to do? We just think, oh, I want him to stop that. And dogs don't understand how to stop doing a thing. And so teaching boundaries and teaching these concepts, it's the difference between having to be like, leave it, leave it, leave it, leave it, leave it for your whole life, or teaching them the concept of, you know, self-control, the concept of staying on a boundary and staying in an area and keeping them out of trouble so that you're not having to manage them, so they can take responsibility a little bit for their own behavior. So yeah, I mean, I haven't met a ton of Dalmatians, but I don't think there's really many dogs that these games would not work with, because you're actually reshaping their brains. And believe me, if you'd asked us a year ago, you know, we couldn't really settle in the evening because we were just managing him. Unless he was crated, he could not settle himself. And last night he was kind of like poking around and doing his thing. And I was like, hey, it's time to relax, pick a bed. And he took himself to his crate and laid down. So if it works for him, it will work with anybody. So I'm going to go get back to my real job. But I hope this is helpful for you all. And if folks put more comments on here, I'm happy to come back later. Definitely follow the links below in the description and check out some of the games and let me know if like how they work out for you, because you can actually see a surprising amount of progress in a short amount of time. And the great thing is you actually don't need to like less is more. So it would be better for you to spend, you know, 2 5-minute sessions playing like a proximity game, for instance, than trying to spend hours and hours on it. Nobody wants to see you scratch, buddy. That's not how we want to end it. Oh my goodness. There you go. There you go. Good job. Good job. All right. So that's it from us. Hope this was helpful for y'all. And I'll probably put this on my blog so I can just point people to it instead of having the conversation over and over again. And again, if you have questions, like stick them in the comments. And I would love to know how things are going with your pups. All right. Bye. Bye.